All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this exciting edition of the Hats Deep Dive sessions. Today, I'm especially excited for this one because it uh, focuses on something near and dear to my heart. My name is Spencer. I'm the protocol and technical lead within Haberdasher Labs, the one of the contributors to Hats Protocol. And with us today is TopoCount, who is going to talk through, give us an overview and a deep dive into how Hat IDs and tree linking works within Hats protocol. Um, when we were first developing the protocol now, almost 2 years ago, maybe even fully 2 years ago, one of the challenges that we were facing is how to deal with this with the relationships between hats. We knew that we wanted to have hats have this sort of maybe even tree structure, but we couldn't quite figure out the right way to relate them to each other. And Topocon had this really great idea to, and I'll let him speak more about this, but to embed those relationships into the IDs of the hats themselves, which gave us some really awesome efficiency and also a really incredible amount of power and flexibility that we can use in all sorts of ways. Um, so really excited for TopoCount to be here today to talk about that really awesome contribution that he made as a foundational part of the protocol. So welcome everybody and welcome TopoCount. Take it away.
Thanks, Spencer. I really appreciate that very kind introduction. I'm too self-conscious to like just talk about what this like the implementation here. So like I had to add some practical application. So we're also going to talk about how the implications for this for Hats modules and how we can continue building on top of this architecture to in really cool and powerful ways. I just didn't want to navel gaze at something we built together. So, yeah. So I'm gonna share my slides and we'll get into it. Cool. So, yeah. Uh, this. As Spencer said, like we need to come up with a way to build like a hierarchy for hats. And we're going to dive into exactly how this hierarchy works. And we call them hats trees, as most of you know. Um, and so like the concept that we created was like addressable token IDs, where like the token ID, and we're going to dive into this in a few different ways so it becomes easier to grok. But like the token ID is basically segmented so that like an IP addresses or uh, yeah, I guess an IP address is a good example. Uh, and so like while each ID continues to be unique, it's still it actually contains structural information, semantic structural information embedded inside of it. Um, and so basically the issue was we had this hierarchy of trees and this hierarchy of hats in this tree shape. And just to be clear here, like this is a binary tree, as some of you know, but like uh, trees can have many children and many duplicates of that same child. Um, so like I just use binary trees because they're simple to represent and nice to look at. Um, but so how like the initial attempt at building this into the EVM was, and like I guess like a basic like implementation would be to have a pointer to a parent hat in a structure which would be encoded in data in storage on chain. Um, and depending on whether or not that so every time you want to reference a hat's admin, it would cost either 100 gas if it was already looked at once, or 2100 gas to do that initial lookup in a given transaction, which is pretty expensive. Storage lookups are one of the most expensive, like probably the most expensive operations on chain that you can do this side of like doing a delegate call. Um, so or any kind of call to another contract. So uh so like the issue is we have this issue of pointers, and like if you wanted to point to like the root hat for the entire tree in the storage, you have this EVM specific issue where updating all those pointers just isn't like a tough engineering problem that is going to be hard like to handle performance wise, but it's kind of infeasible because you can't just recursively go through a tree and access storage because that's going to be a very expensive operation. Uh, so yeah, this is what I said. Um, like if you're not updating all those pointers consistently when reorganizing trees, you're going to have inconsistency issues, and it doesn't scale. Uh, all right, so one of the things that I've like we're kind of past the peak of NFTs here, but and a lot a lot of cool stuff has happened with NFTs. But like one of the prime use cases when I initially wrote this out was PFP NFTs, and ERC 721A was like the biggest kind of like off the shelf implementation, which basically was like just individually incrementing token IDs en masse. So like, but at the cost of like literally everything else you could do with an NFT. Uh, and so like one of the things that I think a lot of engineers don't think about when looking at what a UINT 256 is how big of a number that can possibly be. Like this is more of like anything any of us will ever do or encounter in our lifetime, I think, in a way that is like truly quantifiable to us. There's just like it's an impossibly large number, and so there's a lot of space to play with here. And so what we did was we decided to build the tree system inside this UINT 256 space. Um, I'm going to talk about how this works now, which is a bit of a shift. Like we're going to be talking a bit more about like the math of it all, because I think it's important to understand like how like to really grok how this works as an engineer if you ever want to build on top of this. Um, so basically numbers are represented in like bits and bytes in depending on how high level you're getting in a given computer system. And base 2 is like the way that numbers that computers like do a lot of math, because everything is binary until the quantum computers take over everything. And so what we so what I'm going to attempt to do here is explain how we can not kind of like leverage that in Hats trees to make a lot of complex things that I've shown before simple. And so I have a little explanation here of hexadecimal. Basically, the whole point here is to demonstrate that the hard part of hexadecimal to some people for some people is like the fact that we're using letters to represent numbers. But really, all this does is make the binary more readable. So yeah, that's like the hack there. We can come back to that if people want, but uh, I'll leave this for now. So let's take an example hats tree here where we've started implementing this like semantic hierarchy system. So if we have a hat, the top hat here has an ID of 00010000. You can see the segmenting here that we have where like the top hat address space is 2 bytes, the level, and then like all child hat, the child hat address space is 1 byte. Which so you have and that's so each individual digit is like half a byte. Some people call that a nibble. So like two digits, 2 digits, 4 digits, and then what you can see is we just semantically increment these digits based on the location of the hat of each child hat. So like this level 1 hat, we have one level 1 hat 2, and we have a second level 1 hat here, and then we have a level 2 hat that is a child of a level, the first child of the number one level 1 hat, and so on and so forth. And so what we're gonna do is like a little exercise to understand like how we leverage the address of this hat here to navigate the tree a bit. So if you take this hat's address, and this is a for just a quick disclaimer, this is a toy example. The real address space is a lot bigger. This I just wanted to make this more readable and like there's less extraneous information to carry around with this example. So if you want to get the 122's admin, all you do is do a bit mask for with a level 1. All you do is bit mask out anything below the top hat and the level 1. So this is like a 6 byte bit mask, and you end up with the parent hat. And then if you just want the domain, you shift off the 8 bits to get the domain of the admin hat. And like this is like that's it. So like when we were talking about admin lookups before, this is it. It's literally just a single this specific operation. We'll talk about the total cost of this operation. Costs 3 gas. So you go from like 100 best case if it's a hot lookup to 2100 for a cold lookup to 3 gas, which is pretty sick. And then the same thing for the top hat. You just have a 1 byte bit mask or a 2 byte bit mask for the most significant bytes, and then you get the top hat. And so like one cool thing about how this works is like down here it's O of 1. So to traverse to the top of the tree from anywhere else from any given hat, it's the same operation as it would be to go 1 level up. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool semantic. Uh, and then obviously if you want to get if you want to get the top hat domain, which we use in internally, I think quite a bit. I don't know if it has any external applications. You shift off the 2 bytes that delineate the level 1 and level 2 hats. So you're left with the 2 byte top hat address space. All right. So we'll dig into the cost now. So this bit masking operation itself is 3 gas, but you need a few stack operations to set up the actual calculation. So you have to push the original hat ID onto the top of the stack. Then you push the quantity the value that you either want to shift or mask by onto the stack, and then you call shift right or the and command. So 9 bytes. So this works really well for what we have architected as like I forget how many I might recall it, but we have 14 non-top hat levels, which are 2 bytes each. And then the rest of that space is allocated for top hats. So we have like an impossibly large quantity of top hats available. And then 65,000 child hats available at each level for each subsequent hat. So there's like each individual tree still has like a ton of space. Uh, but there are still situations where like even if we have like a ton of like space at each level, like that's still only 14 levels, right? So what we wanted to also solve was a situation where people might want to uh, have something more modular or have something that is more than 14 levels deep, depending on your use case. We want to have a more generic use case. So we came up with this concept of tree linking, where if you have 2 trees here, and you say like, I guess we'll say like as like a toy example, like the org represented by like top hat 2 is acquired by the org representing top hat 1, and they need to like link up somewhere, fit into the org somewhere. So how does that work? Well, all we do is create a storage bound link between the top hat and the hat that we're linking it as the admin to as its admin, and then you might also notice that the top hat's address went from two to from red to blue. That's because it's still considered a root hat because it's the root of that tree, but it no longer has like top hat super admin powers. It is now beholden to hat 1.1.1. So yeah, this kind of gives us yeah, it's a storage bound link. It kind of gives us the best of both worlds where we have those like hyper optimized traversal calculations. But we also have like an arbitrary level of scale that we can achieve, and also like navigating across multiple trees. Um, you have one storage lookup per tree link, but you still get those benefits of those address traversals within a tree. And it's obviously it's like O of one to get to the top of a tree from anywhere. So it scales pretty nicely. It's a logarithmic scale or as the org scales linearly, the the Hats tree system will scale logarithmically as far as depth goes. Um, so it's not gonna it's a sustainable model. Uh, the only issue is circular linkages, and the way we accomplish that is we have like a lookup on at the point of at the time of linkage that ensures we never encounter the same top hat twice. So that's how we solve that problem. All right, so
There's
now we're
one other gotcha I want to
oh
add,
yeah.
and this came up in our couple rounds of auditing on the protocol that um, because of that additional gas cost overhead of
Mhm.
those storage lookups, there is a theoretical limit because we have a gas limit in all EVM chains. There is a theoretical limit to the traversal that you can do. So to ensure that we make to guarantee that the top hat can always exert control on the lowest possible level, we limit the number of linkages, um, maybe a little bit conservatively, to 10. So you could have um, like technically infinitely, you could do this, forever, but practically within Ethereum, because of the gas limit, we limit it to 10 to make sure that it's always reasonable gas costs and fits within a single transaction to have the top hat be controlling uh, maybe that lowest level hat on the 10th linked tree. So the total depth that you can get is 140 levels, which we feel like is pretty good.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that that would, I mean, these are kind of like joke examples, but like those could encompass the US military or the US government pretty easily. So I think we're okay.
I think so.
Um, uh, all right. But I think it's also important to highlight that that could be an attack vector for a malicious player within an entity, just like linking trees until the tree becomes unusable. So I think that it was important to set that limit. Uh, thanks for that share, Spencer. All right, so now we get to the fun stuff, and this is applications of this like paradigm for modules or integrations that people can build. There so like we there are some things that already exist, and other stuff was just things that I thought of, and other stuff, and yet there was like one more example or two that Spencer and the Hats team have already been like that they're already kind of like stewing on. So there are like one of the way that like a lot of modules operate is if they're a Hatter module, is they automate the construction of trees. You can either mint you either have the ability to mint like hats, um like as an immediate child, or a specific number of immediate of a specific number of hats of a specific hat, I think. Um, you can constrain that at the integration level, but we don't constrain that within hats. And then you can also mint an arbit. You can also like be like implement like a module that is just like creating layers and layers of levels and levels of hats, basically, depending on like your use case. So it's important to highlight those two differences. You can either be like growing out a tree within a given admin, or just like constructing a tree using a module. Um, so this first example here is this concept of module funding. So say you have like a module that provides some service to orgs using Hats trees, but it takes like a quantifiable amount of money to use that integration. And you have like a balance system built in. So like how do you like account for activity from that organization? Well, you can have calls. You can have the caller, anyone from the org holding a hat from that org, pass in the hat that they're wearing, do a check that they're wearing the hat, and then basically subtract their balance if they actually mask in as a member of the org that they say they're a part of. Um, so that's pretty cool. It's like a permission check, and we have a more expansive example on this later. But I'm really excited about this idea because it is it can be it's not just top hats that you can set as the org hat. It's any hat, and then you can do parent checks. And obviously, like this basic check is uh it elides linked trees right now. But like, and we also do these we can do these checks for you inside hats. But I think that this is like really neat. And if you didn't want to support linked hats, in that like you literally just need to compare that they're wearing this hat, and then make sure that the mask is true. And you don't even have to do any you don't have to do like a bunch of like calls to different contracts if you don't necessarily want to, although I don't know if I would recommend that. So then this new example, Raid Guild's cookie jar, which I think is like a really exciting uh technology, or exciting, has a lot of exciting applications. um we thought about this idea of having multi-tiered allowances on the cookie jar based on the hats that you're wearing. And The way that this works is you pass in the hat that you're wearing, and then it checks that the amount that you are requesting is less than or equal to the amount that you are entitled to with that hat, basically. So that way you can have like different levels of permissioning based on a hats tree, different levels of trust in your org based on your hats tree, and I think that that's cool. Um, And this could also be set to specific hats. It doesn't just have to be levels. I just thought levels was a neat paradigm here. All right. This is like a really I think this could be a pretty interesting example for like a lot of social elements, or like I guess meme coin type things. Basically, the idea here is a referral code. You re-encode a Hats ID as like base 58. Use it as a referral code in a URL, and then if someone passes that URL in with that referral code, you are minted a hat within under that hats tree, and each hat is treated as basically a one of one. And then once you pass that referral code, once that hat is minted for you, you have your own referral code to pass around. And you would want a little more Sybil resistance here, but the idea is there's like a time incentive to get as high up in the tree as possible. And you can prevent duplicates by tracking claimants by address. So yeah, that's like I think this is like pretty fun. Um, and it's really powerful because all the information is just contained in this token ID, and then Hats smart contract provides the rest you need of what you need to make this work. Um, there, and additionally, like there's some extra security things that you can do. You can hard code a module to only works for a specific tree. If you want to like pilot functionality for specific organizations, you can do that too by maintaining like an allow list on your module. Just by like using bit masks or just a list of orgs or hat org masks that you want to support. Um, so you have like really granular control over like how um over how an org interacts with a given module, which I think is like pretty powerful without spending a ton of gas doing a bunch of lookups. So yeah, that's everything I got. I feel like I went pretty quickly, but I'm happy to answer questions or talk more about some nitty gritty stuff. I'm going to share the slides now.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Triple Count. We have about half an hour if we want it to we could do some Q&A. We could talk about if anybody else has ideas for how to use hat IDs or tree linking in interesting ways. We could dig back into some of the technical bits if anybody's curious to see a little bit, maybe see again how that works. The floor is open.
Topo, can you describe again the referral thing that you talked about? Kind of like I lost some of it, and it intrigues me to understand like everything that you said there.
Uh, could you repeat the beginning of that question? Sorry.
I said if you can go over again quickly on the referral use case that you talked
Oh
about.
yeah,
Just like I just missed a few words there, and like it intrigues me because I don't have like the full picture, and it
yeah,
was
yeah.
sounded cool.
So say you want to build like an ascendancy of like who referred who. So like I guess an example of a project that's done this prevalently is Barcaster. When you get before like they went open, when you were referred by somebody, the person who referred you showed up in your profile. Um, Now this has like I think this has interesting like social implications and digital footprint implications. The idea here is like uh you basically get to claim anyone who utilizes your referral URL or your referral link as as like a child hat of yours. Basically, they get a child hat underneath you or a hat like a hat that you don't necessarily control, but like because I don't know if there's any real like on chain. There's no like active like mod like there's nothing you would want to like do with that tree aside from like let it grow, but it would be an interesting on-chain primitive to have this hierarchy of like who referred who and when basically built into uh built into like EVM storage basically. I just it was kind of like a toy example of like how what because like you also have to ask like how big are the communities, like it does this scale well with like a web 2 audience, that kind of thing. So I was like I thought and it does because I think each admin hat can mint up to like 65,000 child hats, and I think that like that's a reasonable cutoff for a referral basically. And like at that point it's like, oh, you missed out, you got to find a referral from someone farther down the chain basically or someone else. So yeah, um that was the whole idea. You could basically construct a hierarchy from like seeing how links get passed around.
Yeah, cool. Thanks.
So one exciting thing you could do with that, um, like probably one of the most powerful aspects of that is you have this entire like all the attribution data of who refer to who, refer to who, refer to who, embedded into this very simple, very clear data structure, which is the hat IDs. And what that makes it very, very clear, very, very transparent who referred who and who referred who and referred whom and referred whom, which enables very interesting accountability mechanisms that we can do. So one is that you can just see that very easily, and then there's can be sort of fuzzy social accountability, like you referred that guy and that guy referred this person, and that person turned out to be an asshole. So we now think less of you, right? That's possible. But we can also do more like robust things, like we can attach um, eligibility modules to each of these hats. So and we can do interesting things like say that um, if somebody way down in your referral tree gets placed into bad standing for something bad that they did, the like repercussions, the accountability impact of that could like um, go all the way up the tree back to you in some way. So like maybe in order to refer people, you have to stake some amount of tokens. And if the person that you referred directly turns out to be an asshole, maybe you lose all of your tokens. But if somebody they referred turns out to be a bad person, maybe you lose half of your tokens. And we can do this sort of like um, titration kind of gradation of accountability based on how close you were to those people. So like it's very exciting. I we'll see if it like pans out in terms of somebody actually wanting to build that, but there's quite a lot that you could do with it if you wanted to.
The application of like accountability by social proximity is like actually pretty interesting for DAOs. I think that we need more mechanisms of accountability that are like as like emergent and soft as like a lot of DAO cultures are, and I think that's a good one. So yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. Very intriguing. It feels like this kind of like one instance, or like there's this can be an interesting way to bootstrap uh, in a kind of organization. I don't know what its purpose will be, but it feels to me like as like a very interesting mechanism that can enable like organic complexity to arise specifically in the bootstrap of like of something, of a movement, of
Yeah,
something that then takes shape by the shape that it gets from the tree, from the, like it gets a hard shape encoded on chain, but it happens organically. You
exactly.
don't know you don't know how it will roll out.
Uh, yeah. So thanks, Ito. That was a I think that there are some like really interesting like I think these I'm pretty low level focused. So if anyone wants to like riff on some of the more interesting nuances of these like ideas, that's you're more than welcome to. So yeah. Um yeah.
Wondering if you could revisit and dig a little deeper into the raid guild cookie jar example. And I think it's really intriguing to set permissions or allowances to, like you said, like particular levels or other types of criteria. And I'm curious to learn more about that.
Yeah. So I think uh in Spencer, feel free to like add any like qualifications or ideas or nuances that like I just didn't capture in this. But the whole basic the idea here kind of like it kind of like utilizes the tree as like a load bearing structure in a different way, where like if you are higher in the tree, you're probably like a higher trust individual, so you may have access to like more, you have more trust, structural trust from the organization to and are empowered to do more with uh like the cookie jar basically, so you get more money out of it. I think that this is cool because I mean I don't know. Do you want to do you want me to talk about the technical side of it, or do you want me to keep riffing on this?
Yeah, I'm curious at some of the technical side.
Okay, so like this the way that I kind of saw this working is you can set you can set like an arbitrary amount at a different level at various levels. Maybe some levels like are not not the type of people who need cookie jar access. So it's it's still granular in that way. It's not like it's hard coded to observe some pattern. Um, but like and then so this was written to kind of like mimic the cookie jars API a bit. So the way give cookie works is it's called um when someone requests funds from the jar and there are some checks, and the cookie monster is the requester of the funds, or someone who funds are being requested on behalf of. I think that depends on how you're writing it. I think the security model in this case would require the requester being the only cookie monster, because I think that there could be spam attacks where someone who's like a weak point in the security structure of an organization could just be spammed with funds and then wrench attacked. But but like the so the way this works is like you get the cookie monster requests the funds, they request the amount, and then you pass in a hat that hopefully has an allowance that is greater than or equal to the amount. And if that's true and they're in good standing, which I am not checking here, I'm not checking standing here, they get the funds basically. I elided a lot of security checks here. I just wanted to paint. I wanted to do the sketches basically. But yeah, I think
Cool.
it's worth noting that this is hard coded as a U or like done as a uint8, because we're only talking levels here. We're talking so 10 trees. That's still like 100 something levels. That still fits within a uint8, which is 255 max. So it just makes it it just makes it harder to shoot yourself in the foot and put the wrong number there, basically.
It's cool. It reminds me too of like how it's possible to kind of say, every hat in this branch, could have a certain permission. We
Mm.
haven't really seen that done yet in like the token gates. Um, kind of the token gating platforms don't really accept ranges of token IDs like that yet, but I think they should, because that would be really nice just to say everybody in this work stream, basically every hat in this work stream gets the same permission or something like that.
I I think that like I mean I'm like getting this project, just writing these slides and figuring out these sketches like really. I mean, I'm already like a steward, but like hats pilled me even more, because like it should be like you could be setting up like ACLs for like anything you want to do on chain using hats, and then like uh if like if another project like knows about hats, like you can have like insanely granular permissions at a group level or a role level, um without having to spend a lot of gas to run the checks. So I don't know, it's insane.
That's sick.
One of the other kind of similar to cookie jar, something that I think we might start seeing really in practice, maybe even pretty soon, is this sort of idea for larger, like multi-level grants programs for big DAOs. Like we already have seen Arbitrum as one example. Like their funding strategy is essentially like for building their ecosystem is to give big, giant, fat grants to people who are then going to give smaller grants to other projects. And they're experimenting with lots of different mechanisms for that.
Huh.
But the result is you get this sort of like kind of like multi-level hierarchical kind of funding situation. So it starts to look a little bit like a Hats tree, and we can do that in a kind of manual sense, or we can do it we can enable it maybe in an automated sense where we can set, just like Topo is doing here with the setting allowances by level, we can set allowances by either level or hat or something else, and then just all we have to do in order to give somebody access to money, access to funding, is just mint them the correct hat corresponding to the amount of funds that we want to give them. And we could do other things like attach accountability mechanisms to that hat or whatever else we might want to do. But we don't have to move money around. We just have to mint hats, and then those people can get the money, can like withdraw the funds from whatever central place that they're sitting in that might be especially secure. So all of a sudden we're going from like having to manage funds at every level, like the custody of funds at every level, to we're just managing the custody of funds in one place, and we're giving like very small access to the right people at the right times only by minting hats, which I think could be something that we might start seeing a lot more of.
Well, like I don't have anything else to add, but so I'll throw it back to anyone else who has a question.
Yeah, anybody have questions about? We talked a lot about hat IDs, and Topo. We got into tree linking. We haven't seen as much tree linking as we originally expected when we were building that into the protocol. I think that's because it's a fairly advanced concept, but I do expect it to happen more and more. And I'm curious if anybody in the chat or the comments or who wants to come ask a question or come on camera. Curious if anybody has any ideas for how to use tree linking or what could be done with tree linking that hasn't really been done yet, or some interesting concepts there. Anybody have some thoughts?
I think it. I think that there's like if you already are a big org, I think Brendan's talked about this a bit because he likes geeking out about this stuff about organizational design. You could, if you're already an existing org that has like a structure to it, but also has a track record of reorganizing, you can try to use tree linking to like anticipatorily like facilitate reorgs as needed if you want. Which I think I think Brendan's done, but I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So like more mature organization preparing previously, and therefore being able to have like more modular components of itself that it can move around in different ways. That's pretty interesting.
I'm thinking of like in Slack. So in Slack, like an organization has a Slack instance with like everybody from that organization in it, and then there's a feature to do what do they call it? Limited channel guest or something. So like people that work with the organization that need access to like some things can come in and just have like a limited view and access into the Slack to be able to like collaborate and coordinate. So I'm kind of thinking like in the same way of like being able to kind of blurring the line between different organizations and like where do organizations cross over, right? And need to like share permissions or need to, collaborate in certain ways to kind of yeah, in the interweaving of those organizations. There doesn't need to be a super clear line. There could be instances where different organizations are doing similar things, and that could be beneficial.
Yeah, cool. There's one thing to be careful about with tree linking is that if you are a tree and you link yourself to another tree, then you've basically given up your autonomy. It's the other tree that has full control over you. Um,
So it's always hierarchical, you mean?
that's right. Yeah. So it's not a peer kind of linkage. It is interesting to think about what that could mean. Um, that this is like not related to tree linking, but we can build a contract, or like we can have a multi-sig where that's like a 2 of 2 with where 2 trees are like the signers on that multi-sig, and we might have some sort of joint venture like decision thing that we could get from that, or we could do that at any level of those 2 trees. Or kind of what you were getting at is maybe one organization could mint some hats to the other organization, um, that gave them access to their Discord channel or Slack or whatever it is. So there's lots of interesting ways that we can do that, sort of like blurring the lines of organizations. Um, what you originally started talking about with Slack ended up being different than I was expecting. Um, and that's because what like we've thought a lot about Slack actually as like a strategic model for why one of the reasons why tree linking is really like strategically important, which is that if many people probably kind of know this comparison, but there's sort of this distinction between Slack and Microsoft, where Microsoft, when an organization is deciding whether to use it, it's like the CTO or the CIO is the one that makes the decision to use Microsoft across the entire organization. Whereas Slack, they allowed like one team to start using Slack, and then other teams and other teams and other teams, and then to be able to connect all those Slack instances together once enough teams were using them. So we were thinking that that might be a powerful way for hats to get started in an organization, is like one team uses a hats tree, and then they show how powerful that is, and another team starts to use a different hats tree, and then eventually it makes sense for all those to get connected up with tree linking. That hypothesis has not really proven out yet, but I still think it's going to be relevant at some point.
That's basically like an organization can start as smaller units and have the ability to come together into a larger one. Like you don't have to start the organization from the top down. It allows it to go bottom up. Like you don't have to envision the entire tree from the very beginning. You can just start with small groups, knowing that you just build up and make like have the hat. You can create a hat above in order to like link those two.
Nice.
Interesting.
Yeah, well said.
I think Zoo's point about could be perfect for an acquisition scenario actually is a great point.
Totally. All right. Well, awesome. If unless anybody has any further questions or thoughts, I think we can wrap here. I think Topo shared his slides, which we'll try to bundle up with the recording that we share out. Thanks so much, Topo, both for like helping to build this awesome system, and also for sharing the system with us today, and some of the things that we can all as builders do with that. And thanks everybody for joining us. And I continue to be extremely bullish on Hat IDs and tree linking and what we can do with them. The design space is super big, and we've only explored like maybe 1% of it. So lots more to come on that front. All right, thanks everybody. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, Debo.
Thanks, y'all.